The red flags were there all along, and it's incredibly important to learn how to spot them. So, ladies, please stick around. For those of you who don't know, this is best-selling author Neil Gaiman, and if you know nothing about this man, that's okay. I didn't either. I will catch you up. But while you may not know this man by name or face, you have probably seen his work because so many of his works have been adapted to screen. You've probably seen the movie Coraline, based on one of his books. You've probably seen the show on Netflix called Sandman. You've probably seen Good Omens on Prime. He is the creator behind these shows and many more. He's got a couple slated to come out as well. We'll see what happens with that now that the accusations are really gaining the kind of traction that they deserve. But I think what is laid out in this article specifically is very rightfully taking everybody by storm, and I think the big cancellation is headed Neil's way. Before y'all run to read the article, let me give you a huge trigger warning. Okay, if you haven't read it yet, it took me over an hour to get through it last night, and I honestly missed the person that I was before I read this entire thing. I'm not going to read the disturbing parts in here. We are just going over the signs that Neil Gaiman was an abuser and a narcissist and a sociopath all along, so that we don't fall for these tactics anymore as women. Now, the reason that I'm pretty serious about not sharing any explicit details in this article, because I have to warn you, they are extremely disturbing. This is probably things that most of us don't really conceive of on a regular basis. Okay, just suffice it to say that what this man did was horrible, but the signs were there all along. And that's not to say that these women should have known better, these women should have picked better. No, no, no. We are just simply going to examine how powerful men have learned to set themselves up, even within these positions of power, privilege, dominance, all of that over women, how they have still managed to position themselves as feminists and victims and champions of women, while at the same time horrifically abusing those very women. The reason I say the signs were there all along is because men can't help but to tell on themselves. They cannot help it. When a man tells you something, you just have to believe it. Literally have to take him at his word, even if he's doing his best to make it seem like he's joking. And a man should never joke with you about something so disturbing that if it were true, it would actually make you feel like you're in danger. Okay, a man should never, ever, ever joke about anything like that. Now, the article starts by describing a meeting between Neil's ex-wife and one of his victims. And for our intents and purposes, the thing that I would say about that is a lot of these powerful predatory men, if they have a chance to, they will absolutely befriend or marry or keep in their close proximity a woman who is likely a narcissist or a sociopath herself, and kind of gets off on them doing sick and twisted things together. At the end of the day, that woman takes a huge L, right? No matter what, she will never be as powerful or as protected as this man. She's always going to think that she's going to be the exception for him, and she never will be. In fact, he will probably treat her the worst out of everybody, and she will spend, in fact, the rest of her life waiting to be an exception even once, and she never ever will be. But like Neil did, they will often have children with this woman or get invested in like a business with this woman, right? Think Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. Think Elon Musk and his mom. They have a common goal, a sick and twisted common goal. Each kind of get off on helping each other achieve. If you are involved with like a powerful man who has this seemingly boss girl, ex-wife or ex-girlfriend, definitely seems to be one of the boys that's definitely very pick-me-minded, very schmexually open, whatever it is, getting off on that in a way that most other women wouldn't, that woman is also a predator, and she is with him and near him to gain that proximity to power and prestige and being feared and revered by everybody. Here's a photo of them together. She's definitely giving off Ghislaine Maxwell vibes. And it's exactly the kind of couple that would like, oh yeah, we saw you from across the bar. This is the couple that tells everybody that they're polyamorous, and they don't have to, because you can tell. You can tell by the way that they look and smell. I just know their house smells like incense, patchouli, and ass. Ooh. Together, it's like double the gaslight. You know what I mean? Especially when it comes to addressing things that have to do with like feminism or harming women or the Me Too movement. It is especially difficult when you have to convince another woman, right? Because you would think that a woman would automatically be on your side, but women like this only have their own best interests at heart, and they want to be with these type of men for their proximity to power. Now, the second kind of glaringly obvious, especially in hindsight, red flag is this whole Sandman thing. I personally don't believe that we can or should separate the art from the artist, especially in cases like this, because you will see that his art is actually filled with misogyny. But misogyny is so rampant and so casual in our society that it oftentimes is really difficult to notice, even when it presents very obviously. But check this out. Like, reading this in hindsight is crazy. In The Sandman, the DC comic book series that ran from 1989 to 1996 and made Gaiman famous, he tells a story about a writer named Richard Maddock. So first of all, anytime there's a parallel, writer, that man is writing an autobiography. It's an autobiography every time. After Maddox's first book proves a success, he sits down to write his second and finds that he can't come up with a single decent idea. The difficulty recedes after he accepts an unusual gift from an older author, a naked woman of a kind who has been kept locked in a room in his house for 60 years. She is Calliope, the youngest of the 9 muses. Maddox grapes her again and again, and his career blossoms in the most extraordinary way. This is what I mean by misogyny is so casual and rampant in our society. Netflix greenlit this series also. Like, this wasn't just like 1989 to 1996, like back in the day. No, Netflix greenlit this. This aired on Netflix. It wasn't just like backwards 90s. Ain't a damn thing changed. A stylish young beauty tells him how much she loved his characterization of a strong female character, prompting him to remark, actually, I do tend to regard myself as a feminist writer. So that's the red flag. I mean, that's kind of the underlying red flag of all of this, is like outspokenly feminist men who never speak to other men about feminist issues. They only do it when they're grandstanding in front of women, especially young women. And the issues of feminism that matter to them is like that women should be sexually liberated and that men don't need to pay on dates and stuff like that. Yeah, these are always the feminists. His downfall comes only when the titular hero, the Sandman, also known as the Prince of Stories, frees Calliope from bondage. To punish the rapist, the Sandman floods Maddox's mind with such a wild torrent of ideas that he's powerless to write them down, let alone profit from them. Autobiography, I promise you. Because surprise, surprise, this is literally what he did to another woman. Like, he kept her locked up in a house on his property because he knew she was too broke to go anywhere else. He knew she was freshly divorced, all that stuff, and he took advantage of her. This was one of the earlier stories that came out. Like I said, I did a deep dive on this on my long form channel. And a lot of people think that he sees himself as the Sandman, but he's not the Sandman. He is the writer. Men always tell on themselves. In fact, you know what? He probably sees himself as both, because he's a delusional sociopathic narcissist. So another thing that you can look out for when you are trying to identify a predator is how much this general amount of work and time and everything like that do they put into how they're perceived by the public. Because this entire paragraph, and you can pause to read, describes Gaiman as very charming, very deliberately like interesting and quirky, and he spoke slowly and all this kind of stuff. Whenever you meet people like that, know that they have something to gain from having that type of public persona. And be very careful at what capacity do you get involved with them, because this does not have to be like a Hollywood actor, right? This could be like your manager at a Starbucks, right? They're quirky, they're cool, everybody likes them, they're a smooth talker. Men do this at all levels of, money, power, status, etc. This is not reserved for just the rich.